Hi everyone, so I'm going to show you how you can take your mood board to your thumbnails and then ultimately to your final design. So you should have already sketched out your 3 different thumbnail designs. Again, they should come from your mood board. Just make sure that you're working from photographs and not from cartoons or drawings. You can see here that I have 3 very different designs that I have annotated. Now, in the first instance, I had taken the kind of fish pot through to my final design, and what you're able to see is that I have my side view, I have my front view, and then I've got an aerial view. So you need to think about your pot in a whole 360, because obviously you are going to be making it out of clay using the coil method. Now, in terms of the shape of your pot, it obviously comes from your thumbnail design. So you can see that the body of my fish made up the shape of my pot, so it was quite an organic shape with these kind of 3D elements and my fins sticking out. I'm going to show you how you can take something like this design here. So obviously I have a kind of shorter, wider pot. I've got my mouse handles for ears and some 3D features. So to get started with your final pot design, I'm going to start out with a kind of rough shape. Now, it doesn't matter at this stage if you want to work portrait or if you want to work in landscape. I might go for landscape because my pot's that little bit shorter. So I'm going to start off by sketching kind of rough size of my pot, and what I want to make sure is that I have my kind of side view. I've got space for my aerial view, which my pot is going to be round, so again we're using that kind of coil pot method. So I'm going to sketch around, and then I can have my front view here. So I'm going to have a side view, front view, and an aerial view. Now, with your front view, obviously you've already sketched this out, but this is your opportunity to look on your WWW and your EBI. So looking at your pot design, what did go well that you want to implement in your final pot design, but what could you do to improve that even more? If I'm thinking about the side view for my pot, first of all, I want to give some form to my pot. So I've started with the rough kind of shape of my pot design. I'm then going to make that kind of 3D. So I've got my curved top, I have my curved bottom, again, just to give that some form. You can obviously spend a little bit more time on it than I am. I then need to close the ellipse at the top, and I've given myself some form and depth to my shape there. I already know that I'm going to have an ear coming off this side. I'm also going to have an ear coming off of this side, so I can have it coming round and down. I'm then going to think about my features. So I know I want my eyes. I'm going to have my 3D nose. So I'm going to have that sticking out so I can create a little bit more of a relief. I can have its little kind of cheeks again, 3D. And then I do want to have whiskers on my mouse. Obviously they're going to be 3D. I'm going to roll the clay and pop them on, but they're going to be flat to my pot design. If your elements of clay are too thin, then when they go into the kiln, or even when they're just in the drying out process, then they can snap off. And then what I would be thinking about for my eyes in particular is that each of these elements are going to be that little bit thicker. So I'm going to have my base here, then this shape is going to be stuck on, and then that's stuck on again. So I've got like a 3-layered relief here. I should then also be able to think about the back. Now, if I'm looking at my mood board, obviously typically if you've got a mouse, it's got a little tail. So again, I might have that coming kind of up and round. So it's kind of swirling from the back of my pot design, and I might have it a little bit thicker and kind of anchored to the back of my pot initially, and then I can start to obviously taper that out and have it wrapped along the side of my pot. Now, the way that it could look in my aerial view is it could come out or come up the pot, come out, and it could wrap round. I can then think about where my ears are going to go. My ears are going to go over, so you can imagine my tail's below my ears, so they're not actually going to touch. to have my ears like so. I've also got to think about the kind of thickness of my pot, and is it going to be like a perfect circle? Is it going to have more of an organic shape? I had a student previously that did a kind of swan design, so it was a little bit more elongated, so you can think about how the animal, bird, fish that you are exploring or that you're inspired by, how that is going to affect your design. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of space at the front, and then again now I can start to think about, right, if my, and typically I find the aerial view tends to always look a little bit confusing. Just gives you an idea, so you can imagine if I've got my nose, little cheeks. So the aerial view of my drawing could look a little bit crazy initially, but you'll get the kind of idea with the front and the side view in particular. So again, just creating form. And I can start to think about, I want my ears. So from my final pot design, the ears are obviously quite uneven. If I'm then looking at my mouse image, they're actually a little bit rounder. So I'm going to have them a little bit rounder, try to get them a bit more symmetrical, a little bit higher. So again, they're the kind of things that you can take from your first drawing into your final. It can also add in a little bit more detail. It might even be that I want this little ridge here to be more of a relief, and you can label that as you're working through your clay pot. So we just want to continue working until you have your finished final design with your side view, your front view, and your aerial view. Again, you can look to the PowerPoint on Teams with lots of different examples in there, again, to help you out. But it is really important at this stage that you consider the front, the side, and kind of 360 overall view of your pot design.